They say moving to Australia is like stepping into a brighter, happier version of America. Endless blue skies, friendly faces, and a coastline that seems to stretch forever. And for most Americans, that first impression feels like a dream come true. The people smile more, the cities feel cleaner, the pace of life feels almost human again. It's the kind of place you imagine escaping to when life back home becomes too much, too loud, too fast, too exhausting. But what nobody tells you is that Australia isn't a softer version of the American dream. It's a completely different rhythm, built on values that don't always fit American habits. At first, everything feels familiar. English language, modern lifestyle, similar humor, but under the surface, everything runs differently. And that difference doesn't hit you all at once. It sneaks up on you. It starts the moment you realize that people here don't chase time the same way you do. That store's close earlier, that nobody seems in a rush, that work doesn't define anyone's identity. For many Americans, that's where the confusion begins. Because you come here to escape the pressure, but then you realize pressure was the only thing that kept you moving. And without it, you start to feel something you haven't felt in years. Stillness. The kind of stillness that's beautiful but also deeply uncomfortable. In America, the rhythm of life is constant motion. Productivity isn't just encouraged, it's expected. People eat breakfast while scrolling emails, take conference calls during lunch, and feel guilty if they take a full weekend off. It's a country built on the idea that success comes from constant movement. But in Australia, that rhythm slows down. And not because people are lazy, but because they genuinely value time differently. You walk into a cafe for a morning coffee, and the barista actually wants to talk. The line moves slower because everyone's chatting. Nobody sighs impatiently. Nobody looks at their watch. And at first, it feels refreshing, until you realize it's also confronting. Because back home, being busy is an identity. In Australia, it's almost an insult. People don't brag about how much they work or how many hours they grind. They talk about weekends, about surfing, about barbecues, about time with their mates. There's no badge of honor for burnout here. When 5 o'clock comes, people leave work. They don't check their emails again until morning. And if you stay late at the office, your coworkers won't be impressed. They'll be concerned. For many Americans, that's the first real shock. The sense that the entire country operates on a philosophy that time is meant to be lived, not sold. And it's liberating, but also disorienting. Because for the first time in your adult life, nobody's pushing you to go faster. You have to learn how to live slower. And for many, that's harder than it sounds. If America runs on ambition, Australia runs on balance. And nowhere is that clearer than in how people talk about money, or rather, how they don't. In the US, money is a form of conversation. It's the silent scoreboard of success. People talk about their promotions, their new cars, their side hustles, and it's considered normal. But in Australia, the entire idea of showing off is quietly rejected. It's something deeply ingrained in the culture, a mindset called the tall poppy syndrome. And it means that if you grow too tall, too proud, too full of yourself, society will cut you back down to size. Here, equality isn't just about opportunity, it's about humility. People don't want to hear how much you earn, or how many businesses you've started, or how expensive your watch is. They want to know if you're decent, if you're kind, if you treat everyone with respect. To Americans used to self-promotion and competition, this feels almost alien. You move to Australia expecting admiration for your drive, but instead you get quiet glances if you seem too ambitious. Success here is measured differently, by how well you live, not how much you make. Australians admire the person who takes a Friday off to go camping more than the one who works 70-hour weeks. It's not about lack of ambition. It's about balance. About never acting like you're above anyone else. And that's where many Americans struggle. Because for the first time, confidence feels like arrogance, and ambition feels out of place. The language of money doesn't translate here, and for some, that silence can feel louder than words. Then comes the moment every American faces sooner or later, the cost of living. You walk into a grocery store expecting familiar prices, and instead you're hit with numbers that make you pause. A loaf of bread, $5. A carton of eggs, nearly $7. A simple dinner out can set you back what feels like half a paycheck, and the rent? It stings. Especially in cities like Sydney or Melbourne, where even modest apartments cost what luxury ones might back home. For many Americans, it feels like a cruel twist. You finally escape the grind only to face new financial stress. But there's a difference here. Australia's higher wages balance things out, if you're earning locally. If you're an expat relying on savings or US income, it's brutal. And even when the math makes sense, the psychology doesn't. You're used to abundance, cheap meals, big stores, constant deals. In Australia, there's less of everything, but what exists is often better quality. Healthier food, safer neighborhoods, cleaner air. It's a country that values sustainability over excess, but that's a hard adjustment for Americans raised on more for less. Here it's less for more, and that takes time to accept. The longer you stay, the more you realize that the price tag reflects a choice. To live in a place that values balance, not bargains. But in those early weeks, it feels like the dream is slipping away under the weight of your grocery receipts. That's when many newcomers start questioning if paradise is worth the price. And for some, that's when homesickness quietly begins to creep in. One of the biggest surprises for Americans who move to Australia is how social life works. At first glance, Australians seem effortlessly friendly, the kind of people who greet you with a grin and call you mate before they even know your name. It feels warm, easy, familiar. But underneath that surface friendliness lies something most Americans aren't prepared for: distance. You can spend months surrounded by smiles and small talk, yet still feel completely alone. In America, friendship often forms fast. Coworkers become drinking buddies, neighbors invite you over for dinner, and people share personal stories within days of meeting. In Australia, it's different. Relationships take time, sometimes a lot of time. The Aussie version of friendship is built on trust, consistency, and shared experience. You don't become someone's mate just because you had a good conversation. You become one after you've shown up time and again, proving that you're genuine. Americans used to instant connections often mistake this for coldness or indifference. But it isn't that at all. Australians just don't open up easily. They've mastered a kind of emotional privacy that feels unusual to outsiders. They can joke, drink, and laugh with you for hours, but still keep a part of themselves guarded. For many Americans, that slow process feels lonely. The silence between connections grows heavy, and after a while, the realization sets in: friendliness is not the same as friendship. It's not rejection, it's rhythm. In Australia, trust is earned quietly, over time. And when it finally comes, it's stronger than most of the friendships you ever had back home. America is a country that bends the environment to its will. Air conditioning, drive-thrus, highways, everything built for comfort and control. But in Australia, you quickly learn that nature still calls the shots. The first summer hits, and you feel it. The heat doesn't just make you sweat, it slows your entire body down. You start checking the UV index before leaving the house because the sun here doesn't forgive. You see signs warning about snakes, jellyfish, and spiders the size of your hand, and you realize the wild isn't a backdrop. It's a presence. Even the beaches, as stunning as they are, come with warnings. Strong currents, dangerous waves, shark sightings. And yet, Australians live with this calm acceptance, as if nature isn't a threat, but a partner that demands respect. Americans, on the other hand, come from a culture of control. If it's dangerous, we regulate it. If it's uncomfortable, we fix it. In Australia, you can't fix nature, you adapt to it. The heat changes your plans. The storms dictate your days, and sometimes the simplest things, like walking barefoot on the grass, remind you that you're a guest here. And that's humbling. For Americans, this can be a hard adjustment. It challenges the illusion of control. It forces you to slow down, to coexist, to live with awareness instead of convenience. And when you finally learn to surrender to that, to stop fighting the environment and start flowing with it, you begin to see why Australians seem so at ease. They've accepted something Americans rarely do. The world doesn't revolve around them. So why can't some Americans handle life in Australia? Because Australia doesn't fit the American way of thinking. It doesn't chase success for validation. It doesn't glorify work over living. It doesn't pretend to care about comfort when nature says otherwise. Australia asks something deeper of you: to let go, to slow down, to listen, to accept that you can't outwork, outspend, or outsmart the natural rhythm of this place. For Americans who come here expecting to simply transfer their lifestyle across the ocean, that realization hits hard. It's not that Australia is difficult, it's that it refuses to bend to your expectations. It humbles you in quiet, invisible ways. You learn patience at the supermarket queue. You learn gratitude when you see healthcare that doesn't bankrupt you. You learn respect when you meet people who measure wealth not by income but by free time. And you learn peace, the kind that doesn't need a reason. Because here the reward isn't success, it's simplicity. That's the real difference. And that's why some Americans, after a few months, can't take it. They crave the chaos again, the ambition, the pace, the noise, because it's all they've ever known. But for those who stay, who adapt, who listen to the heartbeat of this strange, beautiful continent, they discover something America hasn't offered in a long time, a life that doesn't need to be earned every single day.